What if I told you that a single doll once sparked a quiet revolution? A revolution against racism, stereotypes, and the removal of identity. That's exactly what happened in Nashville, Tennessee, when a man named Richard Henry Boyd decided to challenge an entire industry. His weapon of choice? Dolls with black features that the world had never seen before. This is the story of the rise and fall of the National Negro Doll Company. But first, let me introduce myself. Hi, my name is Lacey. Thanks for clicking on this video. If you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe. Also, if you are an aspiring content creator and would like to learn how to edit your videos, I have a Final Cut Pro beginner's tutorial step-by-step guide for beginners. I'll have it linked below. All right, now on with the program. To understand why Richard Henry Boyd created this company, we need to go back in time, back to Mississippi in the year 1843. Born into slavery, Boyd was given the name Dick Gray. He was forced to work on a plantation from the moment he was old enough to hold a tool. But Boyd's story didn't end in chains. After the Civil War, he chose a new name, Richard Henry Boyd, a symbolic declaration of his newfound freedom. He taught himself to read and write, eventually becoming a respected Baptist minister and businessman. Yet, despite his successes, Boyd saw how systematic racism continued to poison every aspect of American life, including something as innocent as a children's toy. Picture this. It's the early 1900s, a time when segregation laws and social norms reinforced white supremacy at every level of life, from schools and restaurants to something as seemingly harmless as a child's toy. In store windows and catalog pages, dolls with grotesque features were marketed as Negro dolls. The skin was painted a dark, unnatural black. Their eyes were bulging, their mouths stretched into wide, clownish grins. Some wore ragged clothes meant to evoke the image of a plantation worker. These weren't toys designed to bring joy. They were visual punchlines meant to dehumanize black people. For white children, these dolls reinforced a cruel social hierarchy. For black children, the message was even more insidious. This is how the world sees you. Imagine a child picking up one of these dolls, only to realize it was a mockery of who they were. Imagine the weight of that realization on such a young age. Boyd, a man who had already fought for freedom, education, and self-respect, saw this as an insult on the minds of black children. To him, it was personal. He knew firsthand what it meant to be told you were inferior, and he wasn't about to let that happen to the next generation. Boyd believed in the power of symbols. If children were raised seeing themselves only as ugly and laughable, what future could they envision for themselves? He knew that toys weren't just toys. They shaped the way a child viewed the world and their place within it. So Boyd decided to push back against the status quo. He would create dolls that honored black beauty and intelligence. He would craft a product that told black children, "You matter." And with that determination, the National Negro Doll Company was born. In 1908, Boyd began importing plain European dolls and customizing them to have authentic black features. By 1911, he officially launched the National Negro Doll Company from his headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. But this wasn't just about toys, it was a cultural statement. Boyd wanted black children to see themselves as beautiful, intelligent, and worthy. He famously said, "These dolls are not made of that disgraceful and humiliating type that we all have grown accustomed to seeing. They represent the intelligent and refined Negro of the day. It was a bold move. Boyd was one of the first African Americans to establish a business dedicated to crafting positive representations of Black identity. Parents eagerly sought these dolls for their children. At a time when Jim Crow laws sought to suppress Black dignity, these dolls were symbols of defiance and pride. But running a business like this was anything but easy. The dolls, handmade and meticulously customized, were more expensive than the mass-produced toys flooding the market. Boyd faced significant financial hurdles from the very start. Unlike the cheaply manufactured dolls flooding department stores, his creations required skilled craftsmanship, fine materials, and a level of detail that made each doll a unique work of art. This made the dolls pricier, and many families struggled to afford them, particularly with the broader economic challenges of the time. And then there was the racism. White retailers refused to stock his dolls, dismissing them as a niche product. And so many Black families, while desiring dolls that represented them, simply could not afford them. The price, coupled with the era's prejudices, created a perfect storm of obstacles. By 1950, just 4 years after its official launch, the National Negro Doll Company folded under mounting financial pressures. Boyd had poured his heart, soul, and personal savings into the venture, believing deeply in the potential of his dolls to change the landscape of children's toys. But despite the initial excitement and demand from some Black communities, the business could not withstand the weight of the challenges it faced. Boyd also faced the uphill battle of convincing a society steeped in racial inequality to embrace a new kind of toy. A toy that was, at its core, a challenge to the status quo. The cultural barriers of the time were hard to overcome, but Boyd was determined to create something that reflected the beauty of Black children. The prevailing market forces and social norms were not ready to support such an endeavor on a large scale. He fought tirelessly against not only financial setbacks, but also societal resistance to the idea of Black children having dolls that looked like them. His efforts were revolutionary, but in the end, the market was too slow to change, and his vision for a company that could offer Black children dolls that they could relate to and admire ultimately fell short of its potential. Boyd's passion and entrepreneurial spirit were undeniable, but the financial realities and racial prejudice of the time proved too great a challenge for the company to overcome. Though the National Negro Doll Company may have ceased operations, its impact echoed far beyond its years. Richard Henry Boyd's dolls laid the groundwork for future generations to rethink representation in toys. Decades later, Black-owned toy companies would continue his mission, creating products that celebrated African American culture and identity. Even today, Boyd's story serves as a powerful reminder of the enduring importance of representation and the courage it takes to challenge the status quo. It shows that true change is never easy, but it is also possible for those willing to stand firm in their vision. If you found this story as captivating as I did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We will continue to uncover more untold stories from history that reveals the hidden truths of those who lived in the shadows of society's boundaries.